So I kind of wanted to make a video on the ongoing case of Mark Redwine. Now, if you're not familiar with Mark Redwine, I will go ahead and link some articles below, as well as a few videos that have been done that I think are interesting involving this case. But essentially, Mark Redwine has been charged with second-degree murder of his son, Dylan Redwine. Back in, I think it was November of 2012, Dylan Redwine went missing, and the last person Dylan saw was his father, Mark Redwine, who he was visiting up in Colorado. And the thing is that where Mark Redwine, the father, lived, he lived in a very isolated area up in the mountains and stuff. So that's one thing, and that's a big reason why people think that he might be guilty of it. And I'll get into that in a minute, but these cases just kind of interest me, kind of like not like more just like the psychology behind them and everything, and the psychology behind the perpetrator and stuff like that. But I've kind of looked at a lot of the videos of Mark's reaction to all of this and just what Mark has said and stuff. I've also seen the reaction of like the mother and the mother and the father, Mark Redwine, and the mother, I can't remember her name at the moment, but they had gotten a divorce, or like had just gotten divorced, or had been divorced. But it's very clear that these two at this point have an extremely rocky relationship. From what I've seen, it seems like the marriage didn't end well. Mark apparently has a history of being somewhat abusive and neglectful, both towards his children and his wife. And if I didn't mention already, they do have another son, an older son, who has said that Mark is not a good father. There was actually a segment on the Dr. Phil show. Mark Redwine and the wife were on Dr. Phil, and I believe the older son's name is Corey. Even said on the Dr. Phil show that he hates Mark Redwine, he hates his father. He calls his father Mark. So, I mean, if you're calling your father by his real name, then that's probably you probably don't have a very, most likely you don't have a very close relationship with your father. But who knows, stranger things have happened. But as far as my own thoughts and my own opinions on this, just from everything I've seen, I think he did it. I think that Mark probably murdered his son. Now, the reason that I think that, again, it goes back to that emotional reaction, or lack of emotional reaction, is more like it. I kind of want to use an example. I also got interested in this case that happened back in 1983 with someone called Diane Downs, and she was basically accused of the same thing, murdering her children, or attempting to murder her children. Basically what happened with that case is back in 83, and this happened in Oregon, Diane Downs' story is that she was driving in the middle of the night, and then she saw a stranger on the road. She pulled over, got out of the car because she thought he was hurt, and he asked to take the car, and she claimed that she said, "You've got to be kidding," and then the guy leaned in the car, shot all three of the children, and then she, I guess, fought him off, and he shot her in the arm. She feigned throwing the keys into the forest, and then she got into her car and drove them to the hospital, or drove the kids to the hospital. That was her cover story. But the thing is that, number one, what kind of mother, or any parent for that matter, stops their car in the middle of the night for a stranger? Especially when you've got your kids in the car, and especially when your kids are young. Diane Downs' kids were 7, 6, and 3. And I believe it was either the oldest child or the middle child. I think it was the middle child that ended up dying. And then one of them had a stroke, and then the other one ended up being paralyzed. And the same thing happened with Diane Downs, okay? Like, afterwards, she lacked emotion over the whole thing. Like, any parent who has lost their kids or who has lost their kid or was in a situation where their kids were injured severely or permanently, you know, in the case of her son who was paralyzed, I think that most parents, a parent worth anything, would be an emotional wreck. I would probably not even be able to talk about the stuff without breaking down or something. I mean, they would be just devastated about losing their kid, or their kid suffering severe harm. And Diane Downs' reaction just was not normal whatsoever. And like in interviews, in one particular interview, she was describing how when one of her kids got shot, there was blood coming out of her mouth, and Diane Downs literally smiled when she was talking about it. And it's like, if you're a parent and you see your kid get shot and you start seeing blood splurt out of their mouth, you're not going to talk about that and laugh about it or smile about it. That's just not a natural reaction. And so, needless to say, she was eventually accused of the murders, or attempted murders, in 2 of the kids' case. And one, like I said, 3 kids, 1 died, 2 survived. But one, like I said, ended up being paralyzed, and the other one had a stroke. I believe the one who had a stroke eventually got better, or at least recovered from it. But yeah, she basically ended up being charged, and she pled guilty to the attempted murders of her children and the murder of her children. And I don't know the exact charge, but she pled guilty, and she's still in prison to this day. She's had parole hearings, but none of them she hasn't gotten out, so she's still in. And another interesting fact, they also diagnosed her with histrionic personality, sociopathy, narcissistic personality disorder. Just, and not surprising whatsoever, because Diane Downs, when you look at a video of her, she definitely comes off as a sociopath and a narcissist, especially when you're watching her talk about, her kids being murdered or attempted to be murdered anyways. And her cover stories don't make sense whatsoever. And even, I believe it was the same interview that I just brought up, she was talking about how she couldn't tie her shoes for 2 months after what happened with her and her kids. And again, I think that really shows the narcissism and stuff. And it's like, your kids just got fucking shot, and you're seriously sitting here talking about how you couldn't tie your own shoes? Really? But anyways, but I know I got kind of off on a tangent, but the reason I bring that up is I noticed the same thing with Mark Redwine. His son, and they did find the son's remains, so the son is dead. He is confirmed to be gone. And the father's reaction is very much the same as Diane Downs. Like, he doesn't seem to have that much of an emotional reaction. He doesn't seem sad, he doesn't seem devastated, he doesn't seem depressed, he doesn't seem anything. Now, I did watch a body language video, with Mark Redwine, someone who did an analysis on his body language when he was being interviewed about his son and what led up to his son disappearing. And in the beginning of the video, I'm guessing Mark Redwine, you see him shed a few tears, but I think it's really just crocodile tears. I think it's just him acting like he's sad, or trying to act like he's got some emotional attachment to the situation, just so he can make it seem like he's sad that Dylan's gone. But I think that's all it is. It's just like acting, or crocodile tears, or whatever. Other than that, in every other interview he's done, or every other talk show like Dr. Philby's been on, the emotional reaction is just cold, just matter of fact. Yeah, it's not a normal reaction to a father losing their son. I've seen the mother's reaction. The mother's reaction is a lot more appropriate to the situation. She actually seems sad. She actually seems devastated about it. The father doesn't. Now, it has been basically confirmed that the father never had a great relationship, at least with his older son. As far as his relationship with Dylan, the younger son, there's been varying accounts. One of his friends and Mark's woman that Mark was dating but is no longer dating both said that Dylan had a good relationship with his father, but the mother and his older brother said that he didn't have a close relationship with his father. And also, just little details here, Mark claims that when he got back, he didn't find Dylan home, and it was after 11 at night. And he didn't suspect anything of it. He didn't try to go looking for Dylan. He didn't try to go make sure he was okay. He just went down and took a nap. And see, even that is weird. See, because Mark claims that there were several places around the house or around the area that Dylan would go and hang out at, so he didn't think anything of it. I mean, that might make sense, but even still, I would think that if it's after 11 at night and your kid isn't home and it's in an isolated area, I would think that you would at least have some concern and at least try to make sure that your kid is okay. Like, even that seems a little weird to me. But he claims that when he got home, there was a Nickelodeon show on the TV. Now, the mother claims that Dylan never watched Nickelodeon. He always watched MTV and stuff like that. And has went on to say that his father never really knew Dylan that much, never really knew what he was into and stuff like that. The father also claimed that there was a fishing pole, like, being prepared, and the mother then claimed that Dylan was never a big fisher. He never even knew how to, put together, the basic pole and everything. So, I don't know, it's just little details like that that kind of, make me further sway, in the direction of me thinking that Mark committed this murder. Basically lack of emotional reaction, and then little details like that. And then just to let you guys know, the actual trial, so Mark Redwine has been charged with second-degree murder of his son, as well as abuse. The trial was supposed to be this upcoming month in July, but it's been pushed back to mid-September because the defense still needs more time to develop their arguments and stuff. Which, given the details and given like, and also, by the way, the authorities did check the house, Mark's house, and they did find, I think it was bits of blood on the couch. I think it was on the couch. They found blood in the house. I think it was either near the couch or on the couch. So they found some weird shit, and again, that as well makes me think, yeah, this guy probably murdered his son. But no, the actual trial to confirm, because Mark is currently incarcerated in the, I forget the name of the area, but he is incarcerated in jail right now. But the official trial for him to officially be, officially charged and sentenced hasn't taken place yet. Like I said, it will take place in mid-September, and again, I will link all this information below. But yeah, I don't know. It's just it's messed up. I mean, like I said in the beginning, these cases interest me because it's just like the psychology behind, these people who do this, especially people who murder their own children. And then it's like with all of these cases, Chris Watts is another case. Chris Watts was found guilty of murdering his family, and he had the same reaction. He was cold, callous about it. He didn't seem sad or depressed or anything. He didn't seem devastated at the fact that he lost his family. He seemed very casual, very matter-of-fact. He seemed just fine. Mark seems just fine. He doesn't act like anything's happened to him. He doesn't act like he's just lost a son. He just acts like everything's fine. And, you could say that, well, people deal with things, differently. Well, yeah, but, if you're a parent and you lose your kid, I wouldn't think there's really that many ways to deal with that other than you being devastated. Unless, of course, you just weren't in your kid's life and you just didn't have any emotional connection to them at all. But even then, I would think that you would still have some sadness in you because your kid died or was murdered or whatever. But yeah, so basically, I think Mark did this. I hope that in mid-September, justice is served and he's the sentence is passed down and he is convicted of this crime. Because I fully believe, based on the interviews I've seen, based on his emotional reactions or lack of emotional reactions, based on what the mother said, the brothers said, the details of this case, everything, I think he did it. And I think most likely he's probably going to be convicted of it. I think the fact that they need more time to develop arguments is a bad sign and doesn't bode well for this case for him. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know what you think if you've been following this case at all. What do you think? And yeah, so that's it for this one, and I'll talk to you guys later. So, peace and have a good day.